Hello, dear ones. Debbie Bird Smith here. And this week, I've been exploring some of the very early writings of Louisa and the things that Jesus had to say to her. And I think the thing that's very interesting in these writings is, in many of them, Jesus is talking about chastisements. He's talking about, in general, disobedience in society and with those in authority and how these chastisements are necessary in order to purify the church and to purify society. And he encourages Louisa in all the ways that he speaks to her about the necessity of the chastisements, but also about how the church will uh, renew itself and come back better and stronger and in a more pure state, in a more pure state from these chastisements. So I wanted to read to you a message that Jesus had given to Louisa in volume 4 of September 2nd, 1901. And again, this is one of the very early writings. And Jesus uh, was speaking, but it also seemed to her that the Holy Father was speaking as well, that God was speaking to her as well as Jesus. And he said, my church seems to be dying, especially with regard to the social conditions which anxiously await the cry of death. But courage, my son, after you have reached the top of the mountain, as the cross is lifted up, the church will lay down her aspect of a dying one and will reacquire her full vigor. The cross alone is the means for it, just as the cross alone was the only means to fill the void which sin has made and to unite the abyss of infinite distance that existed between God and man. In the same way, in these times, the cross alone will make my church's forehead be lifted up, courageous and resplendent, to confound the enemies and put them to flight. Then Jesus said to Louisa, my daughter, how much I grieve over the present society. They are my members, and I cannot help loving them. It happens to me as to someone who had an arm or a hand infected and wounded. Does he perhaps hate it? Does he abhor it? Not at all. On the contrary, he lavishes all his cares upon it, and he knows how much his whole body aches to remain oppressed, afflicted, until he manages to obtain the intent of seeing himself healed. Such is my condition. I see my members infected, wounded. I feel pain and sorrow, and because of this, I feel more drawn to love them. Oh, how very different is my love from that of creatures. I am forced to love them because they are my own, but they do not love me as their own. And if they love me at all, they love me for their own good. After this, he disappeared, and I found myself back inside myself. I thought this was a beautiful reading and a very interesting reading in that God was speaking first about his son, and then Jesus came and spoke to Louisa and how much he loves us, that even though our world is wounded and infected and not functioning very well, he can't help but love us and want to heal the wound. And it made me think, sometimes I've often said, sometimes when you're sick or hurt or wounded and you go to see the physician, sometimes it's worse before it gets better. Sometimes they have to clean the wound or operate or give you some kind of medication. And it isn't because they don't want to heal you, that's just the process. And this reading so much reminded me of that, that sometimes things get worse before they get better. But we must keep the faith that whatever happens, whatever comes, whatever God chooses to use as a way of purification comes from love, comes from wanting to heal, and comes truly from the great physician to our wounded world. So let us take this reading to heart and as a word of encouragement that God loves us so much. The divine will is so with us, so fused in us, that he can't do anything but help us, love us, and want to heal us. So until next time, God bless you all. Thank you, and God bless.